Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Bleach review. This is going to be my live reaction and review for the last chapter of Bleach, chapter 686, which is called Death and Strawberry. So, kind of fitting title in that he's used that a bunch of times for like some of the really important chapters where big stuff happens. And yes, last chapter, and we're apparently getting a big announcement as well. I don't really know what either of them are. But let's start. Okay, so we start off here. I should probably say before we even start. Link in description to the chapter if you haven't read it yet, so you can read along with me. But yeah, let's start off. Okay, color page to start off. Who is this gentle-eyed boy? And it looks like a very young Ichigo, but they're emphasizing the eyes. So Ichigo's son, I would guess, and the eyes sort of look like Orihime. So Ichigo and Orihime's son, potentially. I don't know. A girl. Oh no, sorry, reading the wrong way. What the hell are you doing here, you little turd? How'd you even get in here anyway? And there's a girl. Is that Hiyori? I think it's Hiyori. It's just hard to tell. She's really kind of small in the background. There's a snot-nosed punk runs like the wind. Okay, so he runs off after Hiyori comes in and shouts at him. Okay, double page spread it looks like here, color spread. Okay, so all the characters when they're older. Okay, so older Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, Uryu in the background, Renji, Rukia, Yuzu and Karin. Okay, they look interesting grown up, and they're all kind of wearing the same sort of clothes that they had in like the first opening, like the red kind of white and blue kind of stuff. Pretty interesting stuff here, and we obviously have Tatsuki and the other Ichigo's other friends who everyone forgets. Honestly, the most interesting designs are probably Yuzu and Karin because they're changed the most. Like Karin is a lot older. Yuzu's hair looks a lot different, and she seems to have a little strawberry kind of pin in her hair, so that's kind of fun. Other than that, like Orihime looks kind of roughly the same, just older. Same with Rukia, just or her hairstyle. We saw that last chapter. Same with Renji. Ichigo older is interesting in that like his hair is, it seems like it's a little bit shorter, and Kubo's managed to do a lot here with just like the art and coloring to just emphasize the kind of just matureness of his face. So I think that's quite nice. Chad looks huge. Even he was already huge, but he looks even bigger, older here. So yeah, we continue. Okay, so this is apparently the announcement page. None of it's translated really, so I have no idea really what it's talking about. Radio Cone, Bleach 2018, there's a bunch of pictures of people. I really don't know what it's emphasizing. Like, if it wasn't for the people on the page, I'd think it's like a Bleach movie, but I think, is this a Bleach live action movie announcement? I don't know, I'll look it up online and see what's going on after I read the chapter. Bit weird that they just wouldn't even attempt to translate the page at all to kind of get across what the announcement is, but anyway, okay, so we start the chapter, I suppose, properly here after our kind of interesting opening. So Byakuya is running. Okay, it's thought to be the remnants of Yuha's energy, but the Ryatsu response is coming from the West 55th block. That's the area under reconstruction that connects directly to the Squad 13's barracks. Kuchiki. So Soifone arrives and says Squad 13's captain left immediately once the ceremony ended. It matters not. It's been quite some time since Rukia and the others have had any downtime. There's no need to bother them with this. I shall handle it personally. Okay, so Rukia's left. Miyuri, we see on the next page. Okay, how peculiar. I don't recall informing anyone of this incident. Soifone arrives. You'd be wise not to underestimate our espionage and information networks. Since you're here, I'll assume all the information we received was accurate. You're about to find out with your very own eyes, and we see the little bit of black kind of shadow energy coming up out of the ground seemingly expand. It's got some of the Yuha eye kind of energy as well coming up, and they basically, it seems like Yuha's about to come back. So that's interesting that that little panel from the last page was actually something big about to happen. Next page we have, looks like we're back in the physical world. Kurosaki Clinic, okay, and that's clearly Rukia and Renji outside. Older Ichigo answers the door and says yo, of course. Art's really good. They just say, hey, okay, so, oh, I see this place is just as popular as ever. Why, yep, I think I even hear some crickets inside. Ichigo says, this is an emergency clinic, so being empty is a good thing. If you're done with the stand-up routine, feel free to come inside. Anyways, I guess everyone's here now, and we see Tatsuki and his other two friends, whose names I constantly forget. Um, but obviously, we have the kind of perverted one, Rukia. It's always a pleasure. Always. Make yourself at home next to me if you want to. Don't go getting over familiar. Rukia, it's been a while. Your hair's grown out. It really suits you. And then we have Yuzu and Karin. Out of the way coming through, Yuzu's carrying a big giant bucket of popcorn, it looks like. And then Karin has cola. And the popcorn soda has finally arrived. Rukia, how you been? She just notices how grown up they are now, and that they're taller than her. It seems like. But yeah, command's about to start. Ichi, hurry up and grab a seat. Ryans presents the WBO World Heavyweight Title match. It's finally happening. We'll briefly be going over our challenger Kido Yatsura's match. That's Chad. Leading up to this fight. He says, man, Chad is a freaking beast. I still can't believe he wound up becoming the most famous out of all of us. Were you seriously ever in contention? Last I checked, us includes me and you. Okay, so just Chad looks pretty crazy as like a boxer now in the future, so that's interesting. We see Uryu on the roof of a building somewhere, and he says, where is Dr. Ishida? He's taking an extra long lunch break up on the roof. You don't say. It's hard associating with that guy. It's hard associating that guy with any kind of break, honestly. Okay. He was supposed to watch some TV program or something with his friends, and since he couldn't be there, this was the next best thing. So that's so strangely sweet of him. Okay, so even though he couldn't go to Ichigo's house to watch the fight with them, he's still watching it, so obviously he's keeping up with them, so that's that. Okay, so Ichigo says it's starting Orihime, she comes in, be right there, and very, very clearly they're married, they have a kid, they mention it here. You seen Kazui, 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 yeah. He should be upstairs. According to Tsubaki and the others, he just got back from snooping around Hiyori's place. Makes sense, it used to be your room after all, Kazui loves hanging out there, but it's your room now. Yeah, Kazui loves hanging out there, but it's your room now. You sure you're okay with him rummaging around up there? And he says, Yuzu says, of course, Kazui can come and go as he pleases. He gets a free pass like Ichigo, I see, that's how it is. They said, we continue on. That's a little bit weird. Oh, they're just like discussing like Kazui going into other people's rooms, like just a little weird. Wait a sec, weren't you guys supposed to bring your kid along? Okay, so Renji and Rukia confirmed to be together. They have a kid. That's right. It totally slipped my mind. But she's finally become a Gotei apprentice. She's finally been given permission to come down during the Bon Festival. Come on in. But okay, she doesn't seem to be there, and she says, guess she's gone. And obviously Ichigo freaks out, what's with that cavalier attitude? And she responds with saying, don't worry, she's a Shinigami with mere humans as her opponent. She's sure to come out on top. And Ichigo just says, so she's some bully that enjoys picking on helpless humans. Go find her for crying out loud. And then we cut back to Kazui. So he is looking at the little blob of darkness energy. That's clearly the Yuha power. There's an eyeball on it. He's going over closer to it. We cut back to the Soul Society, and the blob is still expanding out. Kazui goes to touch the blob, and we're cutting back and forth between Kazui touching the blob in the physical world and the Byakuya, Soifone, and Miori dealing with the blob expanding out otherwise. He reaches into it, and his hand seems to go through the wall that the blob is on, and the darkness just disappears in the physical world. And he says, what in the last remnants of Yuha's power have completely vanished? So Ichigo's son has just, by touching this blob, destroyed this last remnants of Yuha's power. That's an interesting reveal. Okay, so we seem to cut under the Soul Society now to Aizen. Okay, so the final vestiges of Yuha's power have at last disappeared. So confirmed he's not dead. Um, Interesting panel. What's going on here? Um, okay, so we seem to flashback at this point to the actual aftermath of Ichigo striking the finishing blow against Yuha. So he says, the path is being closed, Ichigo, as he cuts him in half. The path to a world with no fear. The present world, Soul Society, and Hueco Mundo, they were meant to become one. Life and death, twisted and fused together, they were destined to all be one and the same. But now that will likely never happen, and you have yourself to thank for that, Ichigo. Sadly, because of all your efforts here, life and death will never lose their current forms, and all those who breathe will continue to pass each and every day, living in fear of death. That's very interesting. Yuha has talked a lot in the final fight, but none of it has overly meant a lot. He's just talking about, oh, I command the future and I can do all this. Here we're finally getting his motivations for why he's doing this. He seems to be afraid of dying and is trying to create a world where life and death don't really exist. That he to stop people just living in fear of death. That's what he is afraid of. That is a really interesting motivation. Why wasn't this really brought up before now? I just think that's very interesting, and he's trying to really blame it on Ichigo that it's your fault that this won't be the case. I could make it so that people wouldn't die, but I suppose this is Ichigo. I'll read the rest of the chapter in a second. It's just, I suppose what they're going to do here is potentially have Ichigo just realize that that is no life worth living. People die for a reason, and it's this cycle of humans die, they go to the Soul Society, and then I think it's implied that when people in the Soul Society die, they become humans again. So it's just that's the way the thing works, and he wants it to change so that you never die. Okay, so he just says to Ichigo, for all eternity. Go back to Aizen, and he says, Yuha, you desired a world where fear would no longer be a burden, but in a world without fear of death, people will never attain the hope that is to be found from casting their fears aside and persevering through them. While it is true that people can continue to press forward through the simple act of living, I'm just trying to get the meaning out of this. While it is true that people can continue to press forward through the simple act of living, that is in no way comparable to marching forward into the face of death, while doing their damnness to keep it at bay. That is why people have given that very march a unique and special name. What? That is why people have given that very march a unique and special name. Okay, so this march forward in the face of death a special name. Okay, courage. Okay, what they're going for. Okay, so we have Aizen here, and then we cut back to Ichigo kind of shouting at Rukia for apparently not being a very good parent, and talking about courage, and I suppose it emphasizes Ichigo primarily, but also Rukia, that they both have courage. Then we seem to, what happens here? There's a hole in the wall next to Kazui, and he says, so someone's foot comes out of it, and he says, who's there? And she introduces herself, Aburai Ichika. So Ichika Aburai. So this is Renji and Rukia's daughter. Really interesting design. I like the hair. She has her Zanpakuto out. She's in the kind of Soul Reaper Shihakusho, I think is what it's called. She got the sandals on and all, and she says, a Shinigami apprentice. Her sword's pretty cool, actually. The blade itself is nothing notable, but it seems to have a lightning bolt kind of hilt type part. But yeah, she's just sitting on his desk, and she says, and you are, and he says, me, I'm Kurosaki Kazui. Then he seems to just change, and he gets his Shiakusho on, and he says, I'm kind of a Shinigami too, as he's smiling really widely here, and he seems to have Ichigo's sword, and he says, what? And so the blade has death and strawberry. I assume the idea here is, and so the blade has passed on. I don't know if they're suggesting there that Ichigo is no longer a Soul Reaper, and his powers by having a son have passed on to him. and Ichigo's son has Zangetsu now, or is this just a different thing and Ichigo can still become a Soul Reaper if he wants to? But yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and it just ends with just Rukia's daughter's reaction to Ichigo's son being a Shinigami, and I suppose the idea being here, this is the start of a new generation, that these two, very similarly aged, are going to get up to a lot of mayhem, similar to how Ichigo and Rukia, a lot of stuff happened because of them meeting, and that's kind of what caused this series to happen, and the implication being that these two now meeting will cause something else to happen, maybe. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter. Let me quickly try and find what the announcement is officially. Let's see, Bleach Reddit's probably the best place to go to. Let's see, just search announcement. Okay, let's see, links from past week, because there was obviously spoilers a few days ago. Okay, let me just, there's a few threads here about it, let me just try and figure this out. Okay, so the announcement is that it is a live action movie. Okay, wow, that is that even big news? Like, I get it's probably in Japan relatively big, but it's obviously going to be a Japanese movie, and so like it's not going to have a ton of interest for like the Western audience. And if indeed like the Bleach anime was cancelled because it wasn't doing well, why do they think a live action show, a live action movie is going to do well? This is honestly a baffling announcement if this is indeed what it is. Like, honestly, I'd prefer just a simple data book for the end of the series over this. This is just not very interesting. That's a hugely disappointing announcement. I don't know why they even bothered to hype that up. Honestly, like the announcement of anything like live action anime is always like a bit like, oh, especially stuff like this where like CGI is going to be like such a big part of this. I just don't know how this is going to work. I'm like, obviously I'm going to keep an eye out and see what it ends up turning out like, but is anyone excited for this? Really? Like, of all of the things like people are suggesting, and I watched a lot of speculation videos for this announcement, I don't think anyone in any way said live action. Like, to me, live action is something that you do when something is incredibly popular. It's doing well on multiple fronts, but by all accounts, Bleach is selling well manga-wise. The anime hasn't been on the air in ages, and they're suddenly announcing a live action thing. Makes no sense to me. And you've just, I think, ruined a lot of excitement for this potential announcement. Again, hopefully we'll get a full translation of what that announcement page says. Maybe there is something smaller there, but I'm kind of like, I hope we are just meant to assume that there just will be a data book for the end of the series. Like, I really hope that's the case, that the reason they're not announcing it is because it's so obvious to happen, that that's what's happening. So, I don't know, that's super disappointing to me. But yeah, let's actually probably review, do some analysis on this chapter. I'll probably do another video, like, probably sometime next week, probably next Monday, when the Viz official English translation comes out, just as like a final review. I've had some time to really think about it, thoughts. So expect more thoughts in addition to what I'm about to say here. Overall, like reflecting on this chapter, having just read it, I think this is about the best we could have hoped for it to end in one chapter. No sequel series announcement or anything like that. This is the final chapter. This is probably the best we could have expected. Is it perfect? No, and that there's still a lot of like stuff left up in the air, but I think it roughly answers a lot of the main questions. Like, for it to be a satisfying end, I think you had to do the, happy time skip thing, reveal characters who are together romantically, who have kids. They did that on both fronts. Ichigo and Orihime are together. They have a son called Kazui, and then Renji and Rukia are together, and they have a daughter called Ichika. And it seems like Rukia has taken on Renji's name or something like that, or at the very least the daughter is going to be named after Renji. So that's interesting. And again, it's one of those things where, like, just because they set it up in that way, I'd kind of like to see a few little bits of them interacting and see, like, what powers Kazui and Ichika have, and stuff like that. See what their Zanbakutos do. But they're still young. They're just setting it up that, like, okay, the next generation is coming. It just isn't just an end with these characters. But other than that, like, I like it. How they resolve the whole Yuha thing at the end, it's super quick. It is super quick. That is a criticism, definitely, that is fair to say. But having kind of Aizen basically explain to us, like, him thinking about what happened, it roughly, I think, makes sense. Just this idea that we finally get Yuha's, like, I suppose, true motivations. Like, in his defeat, he talks truthfully about what Ichigo has, like, prevented from happening, and he talks about that, and just this idea, like, of Aizen being the one of all characters to explain why Yuha was wrong in the first place. That is very interesting. Like, ultimately, I suppose the conclusion they come to about this whole idea of courage is a little weird, but I think they get the point across. This idea of, if there's no fear of death, that means no one, like, can gain anything from, like, doing anything amazing, like, prior to their death. That just people knowing that they will eventually die kind of, like, forces them to do stuff before they die. And so it's something that, like, is important to have. And, again, is it got across in the most exact and best way? Does it have much meaning coming from Aizen? I don't really know, but it's an interesting point to give in your final chapter. And it's probably one of the few explanations for how to explain why Yuha is wrong for wanting to do what he wants to do. It ultimately really reflects heavily on, you needed more backstory on Yuha to explain why he feels this way, other than just showing us this right now. And then the other thing would be, the plot point of, like, what about the Soul King's energy? Like, what's keeping the worlds together at this point? I don't know. They still haven't fully resolved that, but the fact that Kazui basically just touches the last bit of Yuha's energy in the physical world and it goes away completely, kind of hints that does he have the Soul King powers? Is he the one keeping it together? So does that mean that Ichigo, immediately after that fight, he was the one who took on the powers and then passed it on to his son? I don't really know. Or is it Aizen who's keeping it together? And then, like, just the idea of, like, Aizen, like, they obviously captured him in the aftermath of the fight and just put him back in prison. It's satisfying in some ways, very unsatisfying in other ways. Clearly this wasn't meant to be how it ended, in the sense of, like, this quickly. I assume he probably had planned this as, like, he was going to go through with this as, like, the final chapter, like the basic idea of, like, this meeting to watch Chad's boxing match and have Rukia's daughter meet Ichigo's son as a kind of, like, new friendship forming. I assume that was always meant to be the final kind of how the series would come to an end. It just has happened so quickly that we've missed a lot of the build-up, plot, and character stuff in between the series being suddenly accelerated toward the end and where we are now. So, I know it's very difficult to really think about. I'm probably just going to end the video there. As I said, I will do another, like, more detailed review of how I feel about the end of Bleach sometime next week. Right now, I'm just kind of, like, interested to see what other people are thinking. A lot of the other bigger reviewers, what their thoughts are on this. So, yeah, very. It feels very weird, that Bleach is over. Like, there was no announcement of a sequel series. We're getting a live action movie, which no one cares about, and the series is over, and it just feels very unsatisfying. So, yeah, just gonna end the video there. So, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.